Hey there, my fellow designers and creatives. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to another video in the super ultimate guide to design systems. In the previous video, we went ahead and did a complete analysis and breakdown of the icon buttons of the app. And in this video, we're going to go ahead and actually create the icon button. So without any further ado, let's get started. All right, so I'm going to start off by creating this button. Now, of course, we have an icon, and then inside that we have a sort of a shape, and then we have a little bit of a stroke. So I'm going to press Shift-I to get the components, and I'm going to just search for icon. We want to make sure that we get the icon component. So as you can see, this is, if I were to move this all the way to the top, you can see that this is the icon, right? And we can change here to whatever we want. I'm going to come here, and for now, I'm going to change this to the left chevron, just for now, all right? Now, what we see here is that the original icon is 24 by 24 pixel. But here, you can see it's really small. And as I had said before in the icon video, icons need to be created at a 24 by 24 pixel frame, but they can be reduced or increased depending on the use case, right? In this case, we want to go ahead and make sure that we drop this down to 16, okay? So now I'm going to come that and place it over here. This is perfect. Now I'm going to press Shift-A on my keyboard, and I'm going to apply a color. Now, of course, we're not going to be using any design tokens, any color styles, nothing for now. We're just going to go ahead and recreate it. But I'm also going to reduce the opacity for now so we can just quickly sort of, see this and mirror things really well. I'm going to move this down a little bit so I sort of get to match it. Okay. And I'm going to set this to 0 because we don't really need that. I'm also going to reduce the horizontal spacing to 8 and the vertical spacing also to 8. And there we go. Then we're going to go ahead and round this off. I'm going to use a very big number, like, for example, 100 or something. And we're going to round that off. I'm going to set this back to 100. And if I come over here, you can see this is what we have. And we have ourselves an icon button. We also do want to add the stroke. So you can't see the stroke over there. Let me see if I can find a better place where we can see the stroke to be a little bit more visible. Right? Here you can see that there is a little bit of a stroke. All right. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add a stroke. Now I want to choose and set the stroke to outside, and I'm going to drop the opacity of that to like 50%. Of course, 50 is a bit, too much. I'm going to reduce that down to a little bit more, probably like 10% or maybe even 5, or I think 10% is a good number. And that should be pretty good. All right. I can come over here and let's say I'm going to change the icon here to the share icon. So I'm going to click on this and tap on share. And we get the share icon as well. And this is looking pretty good, right? We can put this on top and it's an exact one-to-one match, right? Amazing. So now we have ourselves the icon button. But of course, we need to now construct it properly. We need to document it properly. We need to do a lot of other things. So I'm going to start off by bringing that back over here. All right. Or maybe I'm going to put it over here so that we can see the stroke. All right. Or maybe I'm just going to create like a frame so that we can just put it and see things a little more clearly. Yeah, there we go. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make this into a component. All right. I'm going to call this icon button. Okay. And here we have the icon. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose reset all changes. Okay. And when I say reset all changes, it resets it back to the original and keeps it 24 by 24. And I'm going to reduce that down to 16 instead because it was originally at 16. All right. And this is pretty much our icon button and this is looking fine. Now, of course, if I were to make a duplicate of this and I want to change the icon, I sort of can't change the icon. So what I will then have to do is I'm going to come over here, click on the plus, choose nested, expose nested instances, and I can click on icon. And when I do that, I can then go ahead and replace this icon to whatever icon I want. So I can choose, let's say the left chevron, right? And there we go. Now, there's another thing that we missed is that there seems to be a little bit of shadow on the bottom. You can probably see that over here. There's a little bit of a shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring in that master component over here and apply that directly to the master component. All right. There we go. Put that over here. And I'm going to come down over here and add the effects. Okay. And here I'm going to set the Y to 2 and drop this down to like 20%. Keep the blur to 4 as it is. Just a little bit of a shadow. And I think this is looking pretty fine. It's looking okay, right? Now, of course, we haven't added any color styles. We haven't added any tokens. We've not done anything of that sort. For now, we're just going to create the button and document it. All right. So now that we have our master component, which is basically the icon button, let's come over here and try to, analyze what are the other states that we need. Okay. Now, of course, we want to create this button. If you want to create this button, actually, I'm going to move the master component over here, and we're going to play around with the instances because we don't want to make any changes. So here I can come over here and change this to a heart. Okay. Now, of course, this works, but then sometimes when we have, liked or added one of the properties to our wish list, it becomes a red color icon. So I'm going to go ahead and double click to come over here. I can click on the main component, or maybe actually come down here to the heart icon. So come here to actually our icons, and I can come over here, and here I'm going to make a variant of this. All right. So we have this heart icon. I can click here to add a variant. All right. And here in the variant, I'm going to change this to a red color filled icon. I'm going to quickly go ahead and paste a screenshot over here, so we can pull the color. I'm just going to create a rectangle and pull this color. So we have this color. I'm going to copy this. Let's see if this color is the exact same as the one we had over here. I think if I create a rectangle and paste that color, here you can see again there's a very big inconsistency. Right here they're using a different color for that, and here it's a different heart icon. Again, I don't really understand why we have this inconsistency. I'm going to go with this color because this looks more a little bit towards the actual Airbnb logos color. So I'm going to pull this color, and of course colors is a whole new section altogether. But for now, I'm just going to copy the hex code. I'm going to copy that, delete this, come here to our icons and logos, and I'm going to come over here and change this by adding the fill over here. Now the problem is that it just applies it to the stroke. We want it to apply to the entire thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and edit this. So I'm going to double click, and I'm going to click on all of these inner points, which I don't want, and I'm going to delete them. All right. And there we go. Here we have two options. Now, here's the interesting thing, right? A lot of the times when naming things, people try to make things a little quite complex, right? And it doesn't really have to be. Now, there are multiple ways of naming this, right? You can call this state, and this one is going to be unselected, and this is going to be selected. Or we can keep it even more simpler and call this selected, right? And for the first one, I'm going to say no. And for the second one, I'm going to say yes. All right. So now when we come over here down to the final design, and when we look at the icon button that we just made, I'm going to come over here. Here you can see that I have the heart icon, and if I change it to some other icon, you can see that everything goes away. But the moment I change it back to a heart icon, you can see I get the selected state, and I just have to turn this on if I want to have a selected state, right? And that solves the problem, right? So that's super cool. Anyway, I'm going to come back here to the icons, and I'm just going to go ahead and organize this a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and set this to auto layout. I'm going to set the entire container to auto layout, and then, horizontally space this out. And I'm going to copy all these properties. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to remove this. Here you can see it's around 120 by 120. So I'm going to also make this 120 by 120. Yeah, we can add that stroke to show that there are variants. Okay. Also going to add some padding here to like 20. All right. And that should be pretty good. All right. You can come back here to the final design, and we have this, and this is great, right? So we've fixed this issue. All right. Now we're going to come over here and take this icon button, the instance of that, and see where else we can fit it. Right. So we're fitting it all over here. Let's try it over here in the player. So we're going to come over here. And in this case, we want to have an actual variant of the icon, right? We want to have one with an elevated state and another is a non-elevated state, right? Now, of course, we can come over here and change all the properties, but the whole point of a design system is that it needs to be easy for designers to make decisions faster. They don't really have to worry about all these colors and font sizes. They can focus on designing the experiences, and the design system should take care of all this unnecessary thought process. So the best way to do this is to create a variant for this. So I'm going to come here and get back to the master. I'm going to bring that master component over here. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to paste this over here. Okay. And I'm going to create a variant. Okay. Whoops. Create a variant. Now in this case, what I will do is I will remove the shadow. I'm going to remove the stroke. I'm going to remove the fill as well. And the icon over here, right, I'm going to change that color to be a white color icon. Okay. So now if I were to take this as an instance, right, of course, I will name all of this up in a bit, but this is our default. Then we have another variant. We've already applied that white color over here. We've already done that, right? And because we're using the same name, which is shape for all the icons, those properties get transferred when I change this icon from this to a pause icon. All right. And if I come over here and if I place it over here, you can see it's in exact one-to-one match. All right. And I can also duplicate this as well. And here I can change this to have the speaker off icon, right? Now I've changed the size of the speaker off icon a little bit, but in the end, it's pretty much the exact same. It's not really that big of a difference, but that doesn't really matter. I can go ahead and increase the size of this icon if I want, but I'm just making sure that we have equal spacing on all sides, which is why I shrinked down this part of the icon, right? But that's irrelevant. So this is also an icon button. So now when somebody is creating this icon button without any background, all they have to do is just select the other state, right? And the way I'm going to organize this is I'm going to again come over here and I'm going to say elevated. This one, I'm going to call it yes. And this one, I'm going to say no. So now when I come over here and let's say I go ahead and choose reset all changes. Okay. Here in the non-elevated state, I can turn this on and turn it back to elevated and all the properties get changed, right? Even the color of the icon gets changed over here because we've already defined that. Now we also want to look over here, right? So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to bring in this entire icon button master component set over here. All right. And I'm going to make a duplicate of this. Now for this, we actually need a background, right? We can clearly see that we need a background, right? So I'm going to press to add a fill and I'm going to apply this color. And now you can see that it's becoming so complicated to decide how do you organize this. Now, do we go ahead and make another version like this where we have elevated, we have non-elevated, and then we have a non-background version as well, right? There are too many decisions to make over here and it can get really, really complicated. And that's why it's important for you to do this entire inventory. Now, one thing that we see over here is that we are able to see some sort of a light mode and a dark mode system in place over here, right? Which means that if we just design the light mode version, right? Let's say this icon button only has the light mode version. And in this case, let's say this one is obviously going to be black in color in light mode. I'm going to delete this, right? And let's add a fill over here. Let's say the light mode version is only going to have an elevated version with shadow and a non-elevated version without shadow, right? And maybe I can still add back that background, all right? I can add back that background, but maybe remove the drop shadow, right? So it's the exact same thing. It's just that we don't have a drop shadow anymore. And then once we set up our design tokens, we will then be able to make dark mode variants. And let's say we take this as an example, and I'm going to override this now. This is not the right way to do it because we haven't set up tokens, but the dark mode version of this ideally would be something like this, and the color of this would be white. This would be the dark mode version. And what we can do is when we are making this particular screen, now this typically is going to become a pattern. I'm very sure this is a pattern. All right. We can come over here and we can tell the developers that, look, this, we are going to force dark mode of the icon button on this screen, right? We'll do the same thing over here. I'm going to copy this, come down over here, all right? And we're going to say, we are going to force dark mode on the player atom, right? Now here we have a background, but in the player atom, we don't really have a background, right? So now we are left with again two options. Do we make a third variant, right? So basically, let's say I go ahead and, just drop the fill so we can see things better. What do? Do we want to have a third variant without this, right? Or do we just have two variants, right? And we let the designers manually remove it. Now, again, I like to follow a principle where you have the least amount of variants possible, but you let the designers know what are the options available, right? So what that basically means is that we're going to have only two variants. We're going to have an elevated version with a shadow. We're going to have a non-elevated version. All right. And when we create the player icon, we're going to remove this background manually. All right. We're going to remove it manually. We're not really breaking anything. And then we're going to make the player atom itself, right? This whole player is going to be one atom. And then we're going to combine it with the rest of the other atoms to create this entire card component, right? But we need to document the fact that we're going to be using the non-elevated version of the icon button, right? But we're going to remove the background. We need to document that. So now I'm going to take you to the documentation and show you how I documented it. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and created a new page called as buttons, and we're going to put all our buttons over here. And here I've created a frame for the icon button. Now, of course, all of these other elements, I've created a new page called as others where you can sort of have a look at everything. These are just like the spec sheet components. And here coming down to the buttons, I've created the master component, put that into like just really nicely documented it and, polished it with some nice image and, background color and all of that. And of course, no textiles or color styles are applied anywhere at the moment. We're going to create all of them later. But for now, we're just going to create the icon button. And I've also created the hover state. Now we know that this button, when I tap on it, is going to shrink to 30%, right? So if I were to come back to the final design and we can quickly have a look at this, right? So over here, you can see that if I were to create a rectangle or a circle, all right, we can see that it shrinks to a size of 30 by 30, right? So before, as you can see, it was 32 by 32, which was the original size, right? And then it shrinks down to 30 by 30, right? We can see that. So we're going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to come down here to the buttons. And what I will do is, first of all, I will call this the elevated version. And here I'm going to say shrink to 30 pixel plus black overlay. Now, the thing here is that first I'm going to shrink this down to 30 by 30. So I'm going to press K on my keyboard and here it is 32. I'm going to reduce that down to 30 by 30. So developers, when they click on it, they can actually see they can actually see that it's 30 by 30 in the dev mode. We're going to explore the dev mode in another video, but for now we can see that it's 30 by 30. The other thing here is that if I come here to the final design, we can see here that even though we reduced the size, there is no change in the actual color of the background, right? So should we have it or should we not? Because here we don't. But then if you look at in other places like this, we do have it, all right? And here also we have it. I don't really have another screenshot, but basically when I hover on it, so if I were to change this icon to the play icon, it actually does reduce the opacity to a bit to like 60%, right? So here also we are seeing some sort of a change. So what I will now do is I'm going to define a rule that every time we tap on something, the opacity is going to change. Now we don't know what is the exact value because Airbnb doesn't even have it. So we have to come up with something on our own that makes a lot of sense, right? But even if you come over here, you can see, where was that in the search area? Yeah, when you come over here, you can see that there is some sort of a black overlay and maybe you can pick up the same values, right? So I'm going to press, just create a white circle, all right? And I'm going to come over here and click on plus, all right? And I'm going to just start reducing this until we get something that matches really well. All right. And it looks like around 3 to 4% is something that's good. So I'm going to go with 4. I really like 4. So what that means, I'm going to come back here to the buttons. And here, I'm going to come here and apply a fill. And of course, none of these have color styles again. I'm repeating that. But we're going to go ahead and fix all of that later. I'm just going to create the icon. I'm going to set that value to 4. Right. So I'm going to say 4% black overlay. So this is how it's going to look in the hovered state. Now, what about this one, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly make a duplicate of this. Okay. And if you come over here, I'm going to change the state to non-elevated. And here again, this is the non-elevated. This is going to be the exact same, right? So if I were to copy this and come back here to the final design and paste it probably over here, right? This is exactly the same thing, right? Here, it's 30 by 30, right? This is exactly the hover state. What about this one, right? I'm going to delete this. I'm going to bring this over here. Okay. Or actually, let me just use this itself. Okay. What about this one, right? Here, only the icon is changing and the button doesn't shrink over here as well, right? Here, it just changes the icon. So again, there is an inconsistency over here because we wanted to do two things. We wanted to shrink the size to 30 by 30 and also change the color of the background. Now, in this case, what we can still do is we can change the behavior of this and keep things very consistent. So I'm going to come here to the icon that I had. I'm going to set the opacity back to 100. And I'm going to add that overlay on top of this again, right? Now, if I add a fill overlay, you can see that the fill overlay applies only to the background. It doesn't really apply to the icon, right? So here is a really cool technique that I'm going to show you right now. What I will do is I'm going to come over here and click on the FX section. And on the FX, I'm going to choose inner shadow. I'm going to set this to 100% so we can actually see what's going on. Okay. Or maybe I'm going to set it to red so we can actually see it. I'm going to reduce the blur down to 0. And here in the Y, I'm going to increase this. So now what that does, it applies that overlay on top of the entire icon, which is pretty cool. All right. And what I will do is I will set this back to 100 and we're going to reduce the opacity to something like 20, for example. All right. Or maybe even 40. So now we'll basically have two states, right? One is normal. And when I tap on it, we get this overlay on top. And maybe 40% is a bit too much. So I'm going to probably set that to 30. And we can tweak the later colors a little bit later. But again, right here, we're not using any tokens. We're just playing around and we're going to apply all the color styles and text styles and design tokens a little bit later. But for now, again, we're just going to go ahead and see how this is to be done, right? So this is a really cool way. Now, what that means is if I come down here to the buttons section, I'm going to make a duplicate of this one. And we can set all of this to be fill container. And I'm going to paste the dark mode colors over here. And I'm going to make this a color style. I'll explain that a little bit later. And obviously change these also to be dark mode. All right. And ideally we'll be using Figma variants to inverse the colors. But right now we will do it manually because we do not have design token set. Right. So if I were to go back and just quickly get the color value, we know that this color value is something like this. Come back over here. Come here to the buttons. And I'm going to paste this color value. I'm going to change the color of the icon to be black, right? And maybe this, I'm going to make this like a little bit more darker so we can actually see things. Perfect. And then here in the non-elevated, we're going to shrink to 30%. And here, instead of 4% black overlay, we'll probably say what was the number that we decided. We had chosen 30% black overlay. Now copy that. Come here to buttons and come over here and paste that over here. All right. So I've pasted that inner shadow of 30% black overlay. And I'm going to change this to 30%. Right. So I'm documenting this as well. Now, of course, this is not the correct way to do it because we have to set up tokens and we have to convert it to dark mode automatically. We should not make these manual changes. But once we set up the design tokens, I'm going to come back over here and then fix all of this up. Now, the reason I'm not making a dark mode version for this is because we know that this version of the icon or this variant is never going to have a dark mode version. We will never have this as a dark mode version. We will always have this on an image, right? We will, for example, we will always have that elevated version on an image. And of course, we're not going to have two different versions of the images. We're going to have only one version, which is going to be the same in light mode and dark mode. And so even if the phone is using dark mode, this will always be white in color, right? Which is why I'm not making a dark mode variant for this. And so now that this is created, we can move on to the next part where let me go ahead and quickly duplicate this. I'm going to delete this. Right. And here I'm going to say variants. Right. I'm going to come here and choose reset all changes. All right. And I'm going to remove the extra tag. So this is going to be elevated. I'm going to duplicate this. Here we're going to change this to the non-elevated version. So I'm going to say non-elevated. All right. And I can come over here, duplicate again. And here I can actually remove the background. Right. And here I can say no background. Now, even though this is not really a variant of here we have only two. I'm also telling developers that, look, it's the exact same as the non-elevated without background. So in fact, what I can actually do is I can come over here, add that extra tag, and here I can say no background, copy that, paste it. And here I can say non-elevated. Right? This documentation is really important. So here, both of these are the exact same components, But here, this is the one with the background, and here it is without background. Now, engineers can definitely go and build this. Engineers will probably build 3 variants in their code base. But in our case, we just have 2, and we are manually removing it for the third one. And that's how you actually go ahead and document. I'm going to talk about dev mode in a separate video once we apply the design tokens. And I'm going to explain all of that later. But for this video, this is what we're going to do. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you did, let me know in the comment sections down below. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more amazing, awesome content. I'll see you guys in my next video. So till then, take care and bye-bye.